Chapter 29. Trigger. Rumi Usajiyama's POV. As soon as Allan closed the door, I went and sat on my sofa. Our interactions might not seem tense, but I can't help feeling sad about it from time to time. It's pretty clear he likes me, but I don't really dare to talk about it. He can probably sense my hesitation. I try really hard to hide it, but he's quite perceptive. He's never acted like a brat, nor does he seem like one. Legally, it should be fine, but I still feel uneasy. Our training has been going really well. I feel less tired every day, especially after he bought me those weights, the first gift he ever gave me. Now I use them everywhere, even on patrol. Even after he was told he no longer needed a supervisor, he kept calling me on patrol in the towns around Mizudafu. I obviously accepted. I always hated teams, but we don't really act like a team. We're partners, sure, but we're always competing. We don't really work together at all during missions. He wins most of the competitions. I only win when he's training instead of competing. By doing that, he slows himself down to match his opponent's speed and fights them on a more level playing field. Seeing him like that always excites me. He's lazy about everything except training. Otherwise, he would never have reached his true strength. I always want to train with him. The adrenaline rush I usually get in life-threatening situations isn't nearly as good in comparison. Even though I know Allan won't hurt me, I still get excited. Every step I take could lead me to get lost. One minute he's moving slowly, and the next my eyes can't even follow him. Making him carry me was just the kind of punishment I came up with. It's a little selfish of me, but I don't think he minds. If I had done it, I would have said something. I can't help feeling like I'm cheating him because of my indecisiveness. This isn't like me at all. But we have time. We've only been partners for a few months. Allan's POV. After waking up, I decided to call Jiren. There are quite a few things I need from him now. I think he's already started working with the League. I started working with him because I know his character. Unlike most people in his profession, he has standards. A true professional, you could say. He may be a shrewd businessman, but he wasn't scum. Now, Jiren and I aren't really friends, more like acquaintances, but we're also business partners to a certain extent. As a vigilante, I didn't have much money, so I ended up taking out some groups of villains who were causing him trouble. It was a usual drug dealer who wanted a piece of his territory and things like that. He thanked me with information. We made that deal so we wouldn't owe each other any favors. Being indebted in the underworld is far worse than owing money to a loan shark. If you're not careful, you'll get taken advantage of. Information isn't usually that expensive. But for me, catching villains is incredibly easy. It's much easier than retail work. But Jiren would feel like he owed me if he didn't give me more. So he started paying me to deal with some of them. His payments were where most of my funds as a vigilante came from, since my other part-time jobs were terrible. I usually only agree because I want to keep our relationship stable. I wasn't worried that this information would ever become public. He didn't reveal any information about his clients or business partners, and out of respect, I didn't even bother asking about his other clients. I remember him being extremely professional. Even when he was being tortured, he remained silent about his contacts. Now I called him to ask about Trigger again. Trigger was a thorny issue for him. He didn't really believe me at all, probably thinking I was wasting his time. But he still looked into it seriously. If he didn't, he'd feel like he owed me. I called him, and we started talking for a bit. Hearing Jiren talk about random troublesome villains was great. He probably hoped I'd come to the Kamino district and take care of them. So, I checked out this Trigger drug again anyway. He finally got to the point. I haven't been able to find anything by that name, but I heard some rumors about a quirk-enhancing drug. He paused, giving me some time to process this. Trigger will be coming soon. I was getting excited. It matches the description you gave. I don't know its name, but it will be on the market soon. He was probably a little surprised by my knowledge of the drug, but he'd worked in this business long enough to know better than to ask those questions. I see. Please keep me updated. If you could arrange a deal with them, that would be helpful as well. This was Jiren's forte. With his network, it wouldn't be impossible to find out more about the Shiha Saikai. But it would put him in unnecessary danger. It would probably paint a target on his back. If he was only interested in the drug, then it wasn't so incriminating. Overhaul wouldn't be after him. All he had to do was act like a customer interested in their product. I'll see what I can do. I'll get back to you soon. With that, he hung up. My cooperation with Jiren was profitable for both of us. Right now, I should be considering how involved he should be with my application. Since he doesn't owe me anything, he can always decline the more difficult parts. Anyway, with the second trigger that hits the market, I'll find a way. I'm 100% committed to raiding his compound, even if I have to do it alone. I'm reluctant to ask Rumi for help. She'll most likely alert the police. And that would waste even more time, but it's not like I can hide it. I'm still wearing the tracking bracelet. I'll worry about all that later. Now, I need to get to the canteen. The only place I can feel at home besides my dorm room. I'll be the first to try that lasagna, no matter how many people I have to step on. Chapter 30. Raid. It's been 3 weeks since Jiren told me about the drug's appearance. Then it was banned worldwide, and last week it was banned in Japan. I'll never understand how banning a drug would affect people who already buy most of their products from alternative sources. But Trigger was already dangerous even without villains using it. It makes your quirk stronger, but weakens your sense of reason. I don't even know how this drug was approved in the first place. Usually, they test them before releasing them to the public. But that's not my problem. Jiren arranged a meeting with a distributor to discuss pricing and supply. He's not that interested, but he's decided to do me a favor. In exchange for taking out another group that's been bothering him, of course. I was obviously there to watch from a distance, naturally. I traveled to Tokyo for this meeting and told my dispatcher I was going on vacation. Jiren was also a little annoyed because he had to travel a bit, but playing poker on the train with him was fun. But he made the most of the travel time. He does this kind of thing for a living. By the time he arrived at the building where the meeting was planned, he could already sense some people inside. Most likely, they were just some thugs Overhaul had sent to get more details about the deal. Now all he had to do was follow the thug. But he couldn't use his quirk too much since it's brilliant and not so good at stealth. He silently followed them to the entrance of the maze. Then he flew toward their main compound, using his perception to follow the underground tunnels. He managed to follow them back to their compound. The thugs they sent weren't exactly trained enough to realize they were being followed. Now, I've decided to talk to Rumi about this. After about 4 months of working and training together, she'd feel inadequate if I kept this kind of thing from her. But I don't think she's incapable of protecting herself. Bringing her along should be fine. I take out my phone and call her. At this point, I had her number on speed dial. It took her a while to answer. After a quick greeting and a few questions. Hey Rumi, I'm about to go on a raid at a Yakuza compound. Want to join? I got straight to the point. I was already outside their compound. After all, I already have something planned. Why, do you need help? Well, that's sad. I don't remember her mentioning any plans during our training 2 days ago. Actually, I was excited to fight alongside her. I'd already planned how we'd position the villains and how we'd attack from different sides. No, it's fine. Have a fun day. My response probably felt a little out of line, but this is the first time she's refused to meet with me. I hung up after saying that. Maybe I should ask her out once in a while. I never call her about unrelated things. Taking a break would be nice. Well, that makes things more boring than they need to be. But I still need to save Eri. At this point, a direct approach would work best, since my quirk isn't suited for infiltration. I'll just fly into their compound. They don't seem to have any air defenses. At least, I don't remember if they did. So I transformed into a beam of light and blasted through the roof of their main building. The first people to come and check out the disturbance were Kendo Rappa and a few dozen thugs. I didn't really remember all the members of the Shai Hasaikai, but I do remember that this guy had a pretty good quirk. Not that it matters. I don't have time for games. I quickly eliminated him with a well-placed laser beam. It pierced his stomach and exploded amidst the thugs behind him. I remember he was durable, so I quickly kicked him through the complex and out the door. I don't think he'll be moving anytime soon or ever, but he's a villain, so I don't care. Of the few dozen thugs, only about 6 remained. Most were caught in the blast. We were in an enclosed corridor, after all. I wasted no time taking them down. I traveled quickly using my senses. I needed to cut off their escape routes. This place had many tunnels underneath, forming a labyrinth. I moved at my fastest speed and found their meeting room. Here were the remaining 8 bullets, along with Mimic. I could sense chronostasis and Overhaul in the basement. I quickly used Yasukani no Magatama. It pierced the unsuspecting villains and eliminated them all. Some lost a limb, others were paralyzed. I truly didn't care what happened to them at that moment. I dashed underground, using a lightweight tendril to burrow through the ground at high speed. Upon reaching Overhaul and his right-hand man, I broke through the wall and traveled through the tendril to their room. I slowed down this time. The break-in was practically over. It had taken 2 minutes and 14 seconds. With these two in front of me, there was no escape for them. Shaiha Saikai was over. They recognized me instantly. My name wasn't exactly a laughing matter for villains. Overhaul panicked slightly, but managed to calm himself. Chronostasis was just as surprised, but he recovered much faster and said, "What did you get in here?" As if that wasn't obvious. Well, after being received so courteously at your little base, I decided to pay the leader a visit and have some tea with him. I said kindly, I was going to play with him a little, give them some hope. I think I could hear Overhaul muttering something about useless subordinates. I think we can come to an agreement, yellow flash. Oh, Chisaki seemed to be putting in a lot of effort. I almost felt sorry for him. I completely ignored his rant about how quirks were a plague and quirks are a disease or something. I was really getting bored just watching him ramble on about how wonderful the world used to be and how Quirks abused his wife or whatever. So, are you going to join us? He seemed to think his rant was actually convincing, and he held out a hand. I contemplated it for a moment. Was he an idiot? I remember him as one of the smartest characters in the story. I left him with his hand outstretched. I struck a thoughtful pose, looking as serious as I could. Then, with a twinkle in my eye and a friendly smile on my face, I slashed his hand and kicked him against a wall. We were underground, so the whole structure shook. Chronostasis quickly pulled out a gun and tried to shoot me. It must be a quirk that cancels vignettes. I remember thinking there might be a problem, but with my speed, I can't really be hit by them. However, I can't remember much about them, so I won't let anyone touch me carelessly. I blinked in front of him, and he tried to impale me with his hair, but I kicked him toward the ceiling. He remained suspended there, his upper body impaled on the ceiling. The revision miraculously didn't disappear instantly. He managed to stop the bleeding from his stump while chronostasis kept me entertained. Glaring at me, he said, "Why?" He tried to place his hand on the wall beside him, but a spike made of solid light pierced his palm and pushed it away. The spike then sprouted more spikes that impaled his arm and torso in 6 different places. "You're really beyond help," I said with the same lazy look on my face. I knocked him out and continued walking toward the cells. I just have to save Eri now. Chapter 31. Trauma and a Little Girl. When I opened her cell door, I saw her simply sitting on her bed, dressed in that awful dress, her arms and legs covered in bandages. Seeing her like that made my heart race. She trembled when I opened the door. She must be about 5 years old, which means she's only been here for a year at most, since she was abandoned after her quirk awakened. I approached her slowly. She didn't seem to want to look in my direction. "Hey, are you okay?" I used the gentlest tone I could manage. Not recognizing my voice, she quickly looked up, her eyes widening in what I can only describe as surprise. And fear. I really hate seeing that. Who are you?" Her voice trembled. At this point, you probably already know all her captors. My face should be new to her. With the most reassuring smile I could muster, I said, "I'm Allan. I work as a hero. I came here for you." My smile calmed her, maybe. She regained that same frightened look when she heard the last part. Please don't. I'll make you disappear too." Well, seeing her in person makes me want to go back and cut off Overhaul's other arm. But it's already off. That wouldn't be very heroic. "Don't worry about me. Everything's being taken care of." I gave her a smile that seemed to calm her down a little. "What's your name, kid?" I bent down and patted her head. She recoiled at first, but calmed down after a few seconds. "And my name is Eri." She paused for a moment. I continued stroking her head for a while, then withdrew my hand. She looked a little sad for a second, but recovered quickly. "You're a very polite girl." Saying that, I extended my palm toward her. Slowly, so as not to startle her, she still seemed hesitant, but she still placed her small hand in mine. I gently lifted it, holding her against my chest. She quickly wrapped her arms and legs around me. She only made a silent protest and looked at me curiously. "Okay, we should probably leave this place." She seemed excited at the prospect, but she was still scared. "Don't worry, I'll protect you." I held her closer as I said that. I started walking back to the hallway. My dynamic entrance might have ruined some of the lights in this place. Ari looked a little scared. Her grip on me tightened slightly. I promised her that I would protect her. That includes her happiness. Using my free hand, I gently touched her cheek. When she looked up, she saw my face, the same reassuring smile plastered on it. Then she looked around. The hallway was filling with tiny lights. It felt like we were walking through a sky full of stars. I could see Ari's eyes widen as she gazed at the light show I'd created for her. I could see the wonder and happiness in them. I kept walking, passing through the lights, sometimes going right through them, other times making them avoid me. I held one up to Ari as she reached out with her little hand and grabbed it. She had one of the biggest smiles I'd ever seen on her face. The panic and fear from before were gone. All that remained was joy and childlike curiosity. The smile on her face was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, and it probably hurt me more than the entire Shy Hasaikai ever did. I felt like an arrow had pierced me. I promised to protect this smile, but I won't let it end like this. She needs to see that her oppressor will never hurt her or anyone else again. With that thought in mind, I pressed on, determined to completely erase the fear of this place from her mind. The lights dancing around us were transforming this dark place that once held her captive into a beautiful painting. They took on different colors and played all around us, as if they were conscious and alive. Looking back, we hadn't gone far. I had walked extremely slowly, letting Ari experience this at her own pace. But we were already in front of the room where I had left the villains. My free hand was already on the doorknob. Before entering, I said, "Ari, remember, you have nothing to fear when I'm with you." I said that with a lot of energy, hoping some of my confidence would rub off on her. She just nodded, a little anxious, but all my efforts were showing. She still had that smile on her face. When she saw what was inside the room, she panicked, clutching me tightly and burying her face in my chest. I could feel her little horn touching my ribs. The sight might be brutal for a 5-year-old, but she had already seen people die. She had already seen the savagery and brutality that someone so innocent shouldn't have to see. "He can't hurt you anymore. I made sure of that," I said slowly. Trembling, she finally managed to see the state of her captors. One was buried in the ceiling, while the other was missing an arm and unconscious. She looked around the room, scrutinizing it and trying to understand what had happened. Then she finally looked up and saw my face. I had a smile full of kindness and care on my face. Before I knew it, her eyes filled with tears. She clung to me tightly, and I heard a choked "thank you." I hugged her back. Now, I just needed to call the police to pick up Overhaul's group, but chances were they'd notice the explosions happening here. They should have sent some people here already. Let's get out of here. With that, I continued my journey through the tunnels, using my senses to navigate to an exit. Chapter 32. The calm before the shitstorm. When I entered the compound's courtyard, you could already feel the place was surrounded. Overhead, I could see a news helicopter. They moved quickly, but that might just be because I took my time with Ari. I guess a little publicity isn't so bad. I think taking action against a group of drug dealers and manufacturers isn't a big deal, even if they've only just started producing and distributing. Most of my problems have to do with how this could be interpreted. I was going on vacation, but I ended up violently taking down a dangerous group of villains. That excuse might not go unnoticed. Anyway, they won't actually interrogate me or anything. I'm still a hero on a provisional license, even if I'm technically still serving a vigilante sentence. I haven't let go of Ari this whole time. I should think of a way to keep her close. I really can't adopt her. Not only am I underage, but I also have a criminal record, and I don't really have a home. I need to think of something for her, since she can't really control her quirk. It's best if she lives at UA. With my current salary, I can hire some tutors to homeschool her. Although, knowing Nizu, he'd probably take care of it himself. He's probably the smartest person in this world. At least, that's what I think. He probably understands that the government doesn't have many options when it comes to keeping me. Right now, his biggest concern is that I might turn into a villain or something. Thankfully, I made sure to show extreme dislike for villains in the past. Aside from dealings with Jiren, I actually hate most villains. I'll worry more about that later. My interactions with Jiren will also decrease after this. As I walked slowly, I could see Eri looking somewhat frightened. More and more thugs began to appear around us. There were about 80 of them. I don't think they realized their boss is gone. Some drew their weapons, while others decided to surround me and rush at me. I simply raised my free hand, sending a small sphere of light into the sky above us, making sure to avoid the helicopter. When it reached a certain height, it grew to colossal proportions, creating a shockwave that managed to part the clouds around it. It certainly caught the villains off guard. Some even dropped their weapons. Looking up, they saw a second source of light in the sky. It looked like the sun was approaching the earth. It wasn't radiating heat, but its size was enough to frighten them. Eri also looked up at the sky in amazement. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and wonder. "Heavenly discharge," I said slowly and lazily, my voice echoing throughout the field. Heroes need to name their attacks. I made it up on the spot, of course. Only Eri and the villains heard me, anyway. At least I think so, not that it matters. Then they heard me snap my fingers, a shower of light beams raining down around me and Eri. Definitely an overly complicated attack, but it looked amazing to the people back home. It looked like the sun was hurling destructive rays at us. The light seared through the people around me, sending them to the ground writhing in pain. The attacks were too fast for these thugs to react, let alone dodge. When some of the beams hit the ground, they exploded, wiping out all the villains at once. This attack was only usable because my perception was focused on the villains. Otherwise, it would have been far too deadly for a hero's job. I scattered the light across the sky, giving the onlookers a bit of a show. After that, I slowly walked over the fallen villains. As I reached the police cars, I heard one of them speak through the megaphone. "Yellow Flash, what's the situation here?" They obviously know who I am. Not many people can wield this much power. I approached them to speak normally. They seemed to agree, even though they were a little tense. My attack had surprised them, but that didn't mean they weren't still under pressure. This place housed a group of villains who distributed and developed various drugs. They were fairly new. I'll give a report later. They just looked at me for a moment. Then the one I assumed was in charge asked the most obvious question they could. "Was the child you're carrying held prisoner here?" They probably needed your testimony for some of the things that happened here. "Yes, I'll take her to a hospital and bring her back to the station later for the report." He seemed quite pleased with that. "You should hurry and take some of the wounded villains to the hospital. There's a huge underground labyrinth where you need to find their leader." He nodded and began moving his people to capture the fallen villains. I gave them some directions and more information about the injuries of some of the villains. As I spoke with the policeman, I could hear many flashes of light all around me. The camera crews had already arrived. "I think I've done enough for now. It's time to leave." Holding Eri tightly, I asked her, "Have you flown before?" It was a rhetorical question, of course. She still shook her head affectionately. "Hold on tight, and remember, there's nothing to fear." Saying that, I jumped and headed for the station, creating a wind barrier made of light for Eri. She screamed a little at first, but calmed down after a while. "Where are we going?" She clung tightly to me. Flying can be a little scary for beginners. Looking at her, I simply said, "Home, Eri. We're going home." With that, she closed her eyes and fell asleep. Rumi Usagiyama's POV. Actually, I didn't have any plans for today. I feel a little sad about lying to Allan, but I don't know why I was a little disappointed when he called me about a raid. He doesn't usually call me in the middle of the day. It's always in the morning or afternoon. For some reason, I thought he wanted to do something else. I think I sounded a little sad, but I don't want to spend time with him only when we're working and training. I think I'll talk to him about it. Turning on my TV, I saw some news about a raid. I didn't realize it would happen so quickly. I could see a figure from the awkward angle of the helicopter. A tall man in a yellow jumpsuit and a marine's cape. He had yellowish skin, short black hair, somewhat thick lips, and droopy eyes that were visible even behind his sunglasses. It was obviously Allan, but the strange thing was what he was holding. It appeared to be a small girl, covered in bandages and wearing a dirty gown. Without thinking, I started clenching my fist when I saw her. She clung tightly to Allan. Her size was almost comical compared to him. The two looked like father and daughter. I noticed a large group of villains approaching Allan. I worried for a second. Allan wasn't in any danger at all. I should know better than to doubt his abilities at this point. But it was more like instinct. The next scene made me smile, seeing him raise his hand. He was also sporting a lazy grin. The panicked cameraman managed to capture the expansion of that small orb. I haven't seen this move before, but just from its size, I can tell he's angry. That smile of his wasn't always genuine. He must be letting off steam. This is the first time I've heard him name an attack. The name sounded a bit authoritarian, but considering the scale of the attack, it was fitting. He was obviously showing off. Was he really trying to create a fangirl cult or something? Regardless, the moment the lights started falling on the villains, the camera only managed to capture the end of the exchange, giving people at home a picture of the fallen villains and the entire yard riddled with holes and craters. The lights slowly dispersed into a harmless and beautiful scene. They almost looked like fireworks. This should give people some perspective, maybe a sense of security. There was another pillar of strength for society to lean on. I could only feel regret. I could have been by his side right now, instead of sitting on my couch watching TV. With a sigh, I turned off the television. He'll probably get into a lot of trouble too. He most likely seriously injured a lot of villains with just that one attack. But he'll manage. He always does. And that's it. I'll bring you the next chapter soon. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it.